Now that we've got our base tree branch EV mapped, it is time to duplicate this around. So it's going to be significantly easier for me to maneuver this and duplicate it around the tree if I actually have the pivot point, the point at which the tree is able to be manipulated at the very base center of this branch. So to do so, I'm just going to tap Insert on my keyboard, and you'll see that changes the shape of my manipulator handle. And I'm going to hold down X for Snap to Grid. I'm just going to drag that to the very center grid point there at the middle of my branch. If your branch is not in the middle of the grid, just move it to the middle of the grid and then do the same thing. And when I'm happy with that positioning, I'm going to hit Insert on my keyboard again, and you'll see that my manipulator now sits at the very base of that branch. Okay, so once more, let's go check out our reference and have a look at how this works. So every time it looks like every time a branch branches off, it becomes, that's not real. Every time a branch branches off, it becomes thin, and it also kind of changes the direction. So branches away, thins, and changes direction and rotation. That's the logic here. So what I'm going to do is that I'm going to have this branch off every time I've got a grouping of vertices here. A couple of reasons. It looks like a natural place for something to branch off, but also I can snap to those vertices. It makes for a very quick workflow. So I'm just going to duplicate this and hold down V for snap to vertex, and you can see that allows me to just snap to that grouping of vertices. I want to scale this in, and let's start our rotations. And again, I'm gonna be really loose in my rotations here. I want this to have sort of a random, more organic feel. Couple things I'm thinking right now. My main trunk isn't looking hugely trunk-like, so I kind of want it to be a bit thinner and taller. So I'll just do that now, which means I'm going to have to do a similar thing to my branch here, and I'm going to have to adjust it. It's actually going to be a lot easier for me to work if I turn on wireframe unshaded so I can see where my vertices are. So wireframe unshaded is just at the top bar here, and it's this little cube with the blue outline. If I turn that on, I now have my wireframes. Okay, so I want this branch to be sitting on the inside of my tree here, so I'll just move that in a bit. I'll just let that intersect. And let's just finish off this branch. So we'll duplicate that, snap it to that cluster of vertices there. Again, every time it duplicates, we have to scale it down. That was the logic we established between all of our reference. And we'll intersect that with the tree again. I might as well just keep going on this one. Duplicate. Bring it around. Scale it down. That's probably about as many times as I want to do this. So each duplicate scaling probably ends up with, we'll probably end at, what, 1, 2, 3, 4. So 4 for each round. And since I'm not going to be duplicating and scaling that one again, I'll just do one last bit for the end of the tree here. So I don't want to go any further because I want a lot of the rest of the work to be done by my maple leaf textures that we'll do in the next lesson. Okay. Let's build up the next one. And what I'll do is I might just pause the video and finish duplicating this around. And I recommend you pause the video as well and do your duplicates. and then we'll come back. You'll reconvene and do a texture for our maple leaves. Just every time, scale it, rotate it, and I'll show you a cool trick in a little bit for adding a little bit more visual interest to your stuff. Because this is looking a little bit stiff at the moment. I think there could be quite a bit more to it. Okay, so I'm just going to pause this while I build out the rest of my branches. Okay, I've got my base tree done, and you can tell that all I've done is continue to duplicate that same base shape over and over and over again, trying to follow the logic of it getting smaller and rotating and changing direction every time it branches off. And I probably could have allowed for a few more iterations of branch, duplicate, branch, duplicate, branch, duplicate before coming out to these twig shapes, which would have given me a much larger tree. But for the sake of this lesson, I'm happy to go with a very small tree. Okay, so the next step from here is to actually create our maple leaf texture, which I'll just flick over to Photoshop and show you what that looks like there. So that's a texture modified from a photograph, and I'll show you how to do that in the next lesson.